So we have a very unusual looking western red cedar here. Can you explain what's going on?
It is unusual. First of all, you're more likely to see a western hemlock doing this, but cedar can do it too, so here's a fine example. And I guess usually we call this a nurse log, but in this case it's actually a nurse stump. So this tree just happened to, its seed fell on top of the stump, it germinated on top of the stump, and the stump was at the right stage of decay that cedar tree was able to grow and thrive. And you know, many species can germinate in decaying wood, but not all can really thrive in it and really take advantage of it. Western hemlock definitely, because it grows very well in decaying wood. You know, decaying wood's kind of a special growing medium. You know, it doesn't have access to mineral soil anytime soon. It's a pretty low pH. Decaying wood is full of interesting chemistry, let's say, compared to your average soil in the rest of the landscape here. So yeah, cedar can do it too, and it's put sinkers right down. It's basically stabilized itself and fed off of this stump, and got this really interesting sort of root system that's taken advantage of the opportunity and managed to get some sinkers right down into the ground too. It's interesting too because it's really thrived, this tree. It's a co-dominant tree. It's done really well for itself. Then again, of course, because of the way it grew on top of a stump and being sort of on stilts almost to speak, it's tried to stabilize itself with a lot of sinkers, but it's a pretty precarious footing, and the more the stump rots away and the bigger this tree gets, the more unstable it could become too. So in the long run, only time will tell, but it might be a little more vulnerable to wind. If you were going to thin, this might not be your best candidate to leave, because it once exposed with more space around it and more wind hitting it, it could fall right off of the stump.
And the stump is pretty high. The base of the stump is actually about this
about
height.
Here.
Sometimes we see these where it was growing on a fallen log, for example. So maybe it started only 50 centimeters or 75 centimeters above the soil, and so it's kind of in a race against time with the log to get its roots in and become stable before that log decays. But often we see trees in the forest where you can clearly see, like you see large mature trees where you can tell that it started growing on a log based on how the roots are, but it was able to grow big enough before that log decayed. But this one is just up so high that it's in a rough spot. It will be eventually.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. But you're right, nurse logs can be a real bonus, and really can help trees get well established. And one of the other really interesting things that the nurse logs tend to do in these kinds of coastal rainforests, I think they can be quite large. And while they're decaying, they're kind of like a sponge. And we do have a summer dry period. We're in it right now. It's a dry time of the year, every year. And during that dry time, these are like little reservoirs of moisture too. So they can be very helpful for trees, especially when they're young and they haven't got a really large root system yet. It can help them survive and thrive and get established.
A little seedling in that nurse log compared to one in the ground, that the moisture that's in that nurse log might help it hold on better.